Hi, I'm Sharaad Kuttan and welcome to Consider This. Tonight we take on the question of the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 document just released by the government of the day. To help me understand this better, I have with me Terence Gomez, the Professor of Political Economy at the Faculty of Economics and Administration at the University of Malaya, as well as Idhan Zakaria. She's the CEO of the Centre. She is also a senior lecturer in accounting with Birmingham University. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. Let me give this question first to Idhan. When you read this, when it first came out, what did you make of it? What is it that you thought this document was designed to do?
Thank you, Sharaad, for that question. The first thing I suppose that struck me with this is the idea of a shared and the prosperity aspect, the shared aspect. Because the moment that it came out as shared, it meant for me, this is for everybody. So this is not just a policy document for the policymakers, it is something that's got to be embodied by everybody, including your man on the street and your workers in the corridors of Putrajaya.
Okay, well, and Terence, your first thought? I mean, you've seen much of this coming out. We've had other visions before, sometimes blurred. What do you make of it?
Well, first I must say, when I read it, I was shocked at its honesty. It talked about the fact that let me go through some of them. The economic growth potential was not there. Industries have low value added, low adoption of technology. The Bumiputra economy is not expanding. Corruption is endemic. Monopoly and market profiteering. I was taken aback.
By the honesty?
By the honesty of the document. But I was even more taken aback by the fact that when I looked at it and the more I got into it, I felt this is taking me back to the NEP, the new economic policy. Since you asked me to talk about it in terms of previous visions, it is so reminiscent of the discussion of the new economic policy which was introduced in 1970 to deal with serious inequities in the country at that time.
So it seems like we're back at square one. Idhan, I want to ask you if you could just weigh in on the diagnosis that's embedded in the document. And Terence just read out some of the sense of our current situation. Do you agree? Do you think that diagnosis is correct?
I don't disagree at all, in fact. When we look at the language that is in the document, for example, it doesn't seem to be anything markedly new. In fact, if you think about it, shared prosperity has always been arguably our agenda. Even the new economic policy was meant to share prosperity across the board. So in essence, in fact, as Terence pointed out, the document itself actually acknowledges implicitly that the policies that we had in the past didn't achieve, I'm hesitant to use the word failed, but didn't achieve what it intended to achieve.
Terence, could there be any other way of cutting this cake, as it were? Growth with redistribution, growth with equity. Is there any other way that a politician or a government can deliver this message?
The problem here is this. They used the word shared prosperity. And they used that in the context of what happened in the last general election, where they did say very clearly, we are going to move away from race-based policies to one that is needs-based. What I had concerns with is the way they have framed it is in a comparative perspective between the Bumiputras and the non-Bumiputras. Now, that's not our understanding of what we were expecting from this government, which talked about a new vision for Malaysia. We are all in the same boat. We should look at it in terms of how we can collectively lift the economy together. There was no need to take us back into this dichotomy between Bumiputras and non-Bumiputras.
Idhan, what do you think what's happened? I mean, is this a trope or a metaphor that we seem to find ourselves inescapably tied to the Bumiputra, non-Bumiputra competition, rather than seeing Malaysia in terms of its location in the world and the global economy and those challenges? Why is it that we return continually to the Bumiputra, non-Bumiputra issue?
I feel that this is because it's convenient. It's easy. We know this is an issue. It has always been an issue politically, and this is the other problem that I've got with the document, is that as a vision document, it doesn't push the envelope far enough to actually go towards a particular vision. Going back to the trope, the well-trodden tropes is easy, but nothing there gives us much clarity on how we are going to get it right this time. It's just telling us what we already know, but not telling us how we correct the mistakes of the past.
Is that how you see it? Is there a little sense of actually what's going to come out of this?
Well, I would take a different perspective. I would argue that when I saw this document and the more I read of its content, this was a more politically driven document rather than one that was focused on the economic aspects of the country. Why do I say it's politically driven? If you look at the authors too, the authors, when I looked at acknowledgements and a list of authors, it seems to be coming out from one party, Bersatu. That was my main concern. And then I also was concerned about the level of consultation that's going on here. Was there a real consultation? This is, after all, Pakatan Harapan's first major public policy. Was there a real consultation with all segments of society? I'm talking about the private sector, I'm talking about labor, I'm talking also about academics, I'm talking about people in the rural areas. When they prepared Vision 2020, for example, there was a major National Economic Council, and there was a lot of preparation going into Vision 2020. I didn't see this for this document. And to add irony to the situation is we have a new Malaysian Economic Council. I wonder how much the new Malaysian Economic Council had a role to play in this, and what of the committee of eminent people which also knows the state of play of the economy. Did they use those ideas from the CEP to address these issues? So why do I say it's political? I feel when I look at it, and why did they put it in the comparative dimension between Bumiputras and non-Bumiputras? There seems an attempt here to garner as much Bumiputra support as possible. And therein lies the tragedy of this document. It should not have been a political document. It should have been one on economic growth.
Idhan, I mean, do you agree with Terence? I mean, do you think this is essentially a political document, and do you think it's essentially about Dr. Mahathir putting his stamp on the Pakatan Harapan government's thinking about the economy?
I think it is. I wouldn't completely say it's entirely a political document, but the language, the flex, is a lot more political than the narrative, if you read it. Unfortunately, I've only been treated to the summary. I'm not sure if...
I read the full document.
I wasn't provided with the full document, and it's not easily available online at the moment either. And so the language that we get, the vagueness is, a lot of the vagueness is in the economic stuff. A lot of the clarity for what is in there is the politics. So I don't disagree with that at all.
Right, okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned to Consider This.